So good afternoon, everyone, and happy October. Welcome to the Legislative Action Committee call for Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness for October. I am Lisa Chapman, the Director of Public Policy, and today you are stuck with me because Eric is out today, so I will be leading you through some of the updates this afternoon. So welcome. You can go to the next slide, please. And the next one, thank you. So just to our agenda today, we have a great speaker who is with us, Jayesh Patel with Street Democracy. So he's going to talk about some of their work and policy priorities and advocacy. Going to run through some of the federal updates. There's a little bit going on with Congress, you may have heard. So we'll just cover that briefly, talk about what's going on with state legislation, any updates there. Micah has a few updates to share with you, and then we want to hear from you. Anything going on around your community and things you can do to take action and advocate this month. So without further ado, let's go to the next slide. And we will be sending out the meeting slide and links. I want to remind you that all of our LAC meetings are recorded, and Micah has a YouTube channel where they're posted. So if you happen to miss 1 month or you want to go back to one, and you can find them here. So thank you, Amy, for that. So it is my pleasure today to introduce Jayesh Patel, who leads Street Democracy's Functional Sentencing Project and serves as defense counsel in Street Outreach Court in Detroit. Before founding Street Democracy, he worked at a DC economic development nonprofit, organizing community actions and stabilizing the lives of returning citizens. Outside of Street Democracy, Jayesh currently serves on the board. He's one of the lawyers on the ACLU of Michigan, and also as director of 482 Forward, which is a Detroit student parent advocacy organization. Jayesh was previously chair of the American Bar Association's Commission on Homelessness and Poverty and a clinical professor at Michigan State University's College of Law. Go Green. Jayesh is the son of immigrants, a parent of 2 salty teenagers, and the husband of a better person, and I love his bio. And we are super excited to welcome him today to talk about Street Democracy's important work. Jayesh, to you.
Thank you. I'm going to share the document that I was going to screen share, or so maybe it makes sense or easier for you to kind of follow along that way. Do you want me to share the screen, or do you want me to just go off of that? Or since everybody's got the link themselves.
Up to you. Which would you prefer?
I'm good. I'm good with trusting everybody to have their own.
That sounds good.
So let me just get into this. We got into this work by trying to solve the kind of cycle of criminalization and poverty. And that's kind of our main bend, is to try to come up with ways that we can make alternatives to the criminal justice system, whether it's primarily deflection or in our case, which started with post-conviction relief. And I'll kind of go over some of that throughout the presentation, but the main thing is kind of, I wanted to make sure we talked about the policy that we're working on and just kind of our approach to policy generally. So first is kind of like thinking about, when we design systems and policies, that the trajectory of the path of solving the problem is towards the just outcome. So that kind of consider it like, even if there's a failure with respect to the application process or some other kind of like critical component, that the default position ends up being the just position, the position we want. And so that's what we look for, is to design those kinds of things, or what's the policy that would lead us to that default position. The second thing is kind of making sure that we are, the policies that we do advocate for are not just about adjudicating kind of like the times when someone fails fails to comply with the social policy, but rather are we using this opportunity to address kind of like the underlying issue when it comes to like punishment stuff, and then like creating pathways that like lead back to a legal status. And so to make sure that we're not like creating these, kind of like what's called cascading failures. So one problem in one space leads to this like cascading failures across the board. And then we saw that a lot with our driver's license kind of suspensions for court fees that were also then related to driver responsibility fees. So thankfully, a lot of the new legislation in the last couple of years has done away with a lot of that stuff. One of the things we're working on currently right now is the revision to 303. Now, 303 is when a Secretary of State can issue a license or not. The big push right now is for undocumented folks to be able to get a license. But down in 1G of that is where unlicensed or people who've never acquired a license have this 3-year bar on 3-year bar from the last conviction from signing up for getting a license. And so that again is kind of like what we were talking about, where there's this like cascading failure. So now this person doesn't have this pathway back into a legal status. And so for both the undocumented folks as well as for people who got tickets while they were unlicensed, that 1G stops them from getting that for that 3-year bar. And we want to remove that 3-year bar so that when we find clients or people are ready to kind of turn the corner, that they have that ability to get into that legal status position. So kind of moving along, we did talk about this a couple of years ago, back in like 2018, about kind of like how police are being asked to do things with respect to homelessness that they were never kind of trained to do. And this kind of goes to a lot of the encampments clearing, as well as kind of like the mindset of a lot of folks when coming up to a situation where they're experiencing or encountering somebody who lives on the streets. And this idea of like compliance being, either within 2 weeks that they're supposed to move residences before they get swept out, or encountering somebody who has a mental health issue and using police tactics or expecting that person will comply within seconds. And so one of the things we were advocating for at that time was obviously the general stuff with de-escalatory practice. One of the specific things was CIT, which is crisis intervention training for all police officers rather than just a select group. Studies show that the CIT training does reduce incidents of police violence interactions. So overall, whether the person was experiencing crisis or not. And so post George Floyd, there's police departments have been a little more receptive to that argument and that type of training. And there's been some good progress. We have not led that, but I'm just letting you know that that's something that we kind of thought about and talked about, as well as using the police officers as, instead of writing tickets, to start deflecting to services as the first line of intervention. One of the things that we've been kind of, our main kind of thing is something called Street Outreach Court Detroit. And that is a post-conviction relief. So there was, I'll just talk about it. Like there was those fines and fees that were holding up people's driver's license, as well as the warrants that they couldn't pay. And there was a big kind of like thing with people getting thrown into jail when they weren't able to pay. So a lot of people just never came. And so this was a way to center getting services as the alternative payment. So not community service, but going to organizations that serve the homeless, using those reliefs, using those services as the alternative sentence. This person applied for housing. This person entered shelter. This person started working on job training or applied for disability, got their public benefits, signed up for Obama phone. Using those kinds of services that they need anyway, as alternative sentence in lieu of fines and fees and traditional community services. And so that's something that we've done in Detroit. We've helped Flint start their court. We helped, I think, Battle Creek a while back start theirs, although I think that's fizzled now. But that's something that we're actively looking to try to kind of come up with an even less intensive, non-programmatic, but more like community-directed alternative sentencing model. I'm happy to talk about that, individually or after. The next thing is to talk about like what we've been able to do either here or through the APA is to focus on adjunctive eligibility and stated qualifications and proxies. So what this is essentially that my eligibility for one program means I'm automatically eligible for another program. Adjunctive eligibility is the term that's specifically used for WIC, but just generally, that's kind of like the general idea in totality for this kind of like eligible for one means eligibility for the other. I have Medicaid, I'm automatically income and asset eligible for anything else, that type of thing. That same kind of thing means that we want to reduce, or we look to reduce kind of those kinds of proxies all the way to those same standards. So considering when we advocate for policy change to make sure that everything aligns up according. So like not, some programs aren't 125 of poverty, some are 133, some are 250. Instead that they kind of all have this like cascading benefit so that it makes it easy to administer, so we can kind of make it also easier to apply. The second thing is to think about like, is the stated qualifications. This was something that we were able to kind of accomplish through the APA's work, where advocate for that stated qualification. This is a COVID emergency. My income is related to COVID emergencies. And at the second guidance, I think for Treasury was that my income can be stated. I am below this income. And using that as a front end way to get people qualified. So it kind of goes to the thing that's in the italics above, is that most of the systems are fraud detection systems, right? I want to make sure a bad person isn't getting this benefit. And instead of, I want to make the person who needs benefits get it as soon as possible. And so thinking through like when I'm advocating for policies or programs, that we think about universality versus like specific targeted populations, so that it's easier to both qualify and administer. So it's like a win-win from both sides of this coin. My kind of like pet thing that seems to be getting traction now that I wrote this paper back in law school, actually, about moving all the benefits calculations to Treasury versus MDHHS. And this is the tax credit, child tax credit was the first one they did it in such a broad way. But essentially it's because, I already know your age, I already know your income, I already know who's in your household. And so all these kinds of like major qualifications come through, and I know the age of the kid. And so I can kind of administer a lot of the programs through just those 5 factors. And because it's linked to a bank account, I can give you the benefit right away. So that's my like dream world. So, but just as a thought, like considering for whatever you guys end up advocating for. One of the other things we did a while back was the Lifeline, where we asked the Public Service Commission to, or advocated for the Public Service Commission to list the rate plans of folks who are providing Lifeline services. And so this could be a boon for a lot of folks that are shelter providers, to kind of link them to that, especially the ones that provide free phones. And so that's actually like a bonus that they added on their own about whether they offer a free phone or not. But and that's kind of been like growing, but you can see the data caps are, which ones have data caps, which ones don't have data caps and things like that. So it can help case managers, direct people to the phone that they're going to need to, show up in court, apply for benefits, stay on hold for 40 minutes, the drill. Kind of like bigger policy things to think about is kind of like the direct pipeline from street to housing, and thinking about like multiple pathways of that. And you know, the key thing, like the thing that I think leads to the most, or what we hear leads to the most, like anti-homeless policies, are the fact that folks are unsheltered in the street, and what do we do about this population? And I think, you know, as you guys all probably know, the number one thing that most of those folks talk about is that shelter is not disaggregated, right? They're sharing a space with people that they may not feel comfortable with or had bad experiences. So creating kind of new shelter space that's related to, that is disaggregated, seems to be one of the better ways to kind of get people into like a pathway towards housing that also helps with the public sentiment towards the homeless.
Jayesh,
Second,
this is Amy Stevenson. I'm
yep.
sorry to interrupt you, but before we go
Yeah.
any further, I want to make sure we're catching questions in the Q&A.
Oh,
Would you rather
sure.
save them at the end or address them as we're on those topics?
I'm cool with whatever you guys want me to do.
Okay.
So I'm happy to do whichever way.
Okay. I'm a little late in catching this, so I apologize to Ms. Scott. But one question a few minutes ago had to do with driver's license. What about lifetime revocation of driver's license? Where does that fall on the driving justice?
So we actually, I just got so we had this law change in 1999. And so my guy had like, it wasn't effectively a lifetime, but it was till 2069. And so we had to do this like special petition for that because it was these 1999s and previous. So I just got the STIP order on it, which is cool. But we are advocating for that 904, which is, these are 904 additional suspensions. So I drove on a revoked license and I just kept driving. And then it's like 5-year tack-ons or whatever. So we are working on some of those things to just like, to get rid of that additional like suspension period, or everything before 99 to get cleared out just entirely. So it's kind of like some of the policy we, you know, like you want to just kind of make sure you're having those interactions to kind of clear up the things. So like I said, the kind of pathway back into legal status. But yeah, those conversations are ongoing. You gotta sometimes get on so we have a regular meeting with the Secretary of State to talk about their policies and our policies that we want to get done. So those are those kind of conversations happen, and it's just kind of like we don't have a policy arm that like dedicated to like, you know, pushing our ideas, but instead we want to use the levers that exist. And so we just have those conversations. Here's what we're seeing. Here's what's holding up our people. And then we kind of, you know, where we can push a little bit here and there, but it's not our like main bag. But we do have that in line with like where we're going. There's a hand, Anne.
The other question also is the part about the bureaucratic system designed to stop the wrong people from getting help. Do you know of any states or areas where that culture or that view has shifted that could be modeled, or is that a pretty national phenomenon?
So it is a national phenomenon because of the kind of like the clawbacks that happen, right? Like your audit from whatever department gave you the money, right? So if you got primarily, like, let's say you got federal money, then whatever the federal money like regulations are. So the thing that I highlighted was the COVID. We had to actually get Treasury to issue the new kind of guidance on. I would say that's probably like the best case for like thinking through, like, because they had to get the money out, right? And so a large part of the problem was that people were stumbling nationwide. The counties were stumbling getting the relief out in time, and so because they were getting that relief out, they weren't getting the relief out in time. Their calculation for how much more money they got the second time was based on how much money they got out the first time. And so a bunch of counties was like, hey, you know, we can't process these files that fast until you give us some kind of relief in terms of like the documentation. And so that's when the first time they did stated income and stated qualifications. And so the idea being that we'll catch you on the back end on the fraud side. and so that was the idea behind that. Is like we won't be able to process this level and this quantity of intake without doing some kind of reliance on, fraud protections or stated income, and we'll just get you on perjury or something on the back end.
Got it.
And that's
Thank
kind of
you.
where, yeah, and that's kind of where the treasury idea comes in, is that you're going to get me on the taxes, so now you'll just have this like place to take the money back from my refund. So there's kind of like a collection system built in for any overpayments, rather than like some extra draconian one like we saw with workers' comp or whatever it was here in Michigan. So that way these kind of systems are in a singular spot. But yeah,
Thank
any other
you.
questions?
Nope, we are all caught up. Thank you.
Okay, so a few things here on NIMBY and building low affordable income housing. So one of the things to think about is, creating some, even when you create like deed restricted land, so like you're only going to sell to 75% of AMI or something like this. And obviously we want to co-locate some of those housing projects in communities of opportunity, that you want to make sure that you kind of like combat the potential NIMBY problem. So if we're doing infill housing, you can have the city, or consider advocating for the city to create special zones for this income limited type of housing, so that it doesn't affect, like, let's say the rest of the neighborhood that is a regular price. So it's just like not a comp, so that it doesn't drive down the cost for that. And that way maybe combat some of that, but particularly like for infill kind of places like, Pontiac, Saginaw, that type of thing. So that's one, that's a idea. Houston has a CLT that kind of covers the way they kind of covered that tax credit, or that tax kind of designation, but I think it could be done through zoning. The one I think should be awesome, or what I'd love to do, I hope there was a city to do it, was essentially like a rental license ordinance that kind of like built in some of the stuff that, that's getting worked on, like the source of income and things like that, kind of issues. But as well as like, in my dream would be restricting it to high density residential only, going forward, so that we can drive people out of the starter home market, like investors out of the starter home market, so that there is now a place for people who have the low income but steady employment to be able to have that starter home, save that kind of perspective, and then move forward. Along those lines is like starting to think about taking out escalators that are built into the code, like certain materials that have to be used on the exteriors of homes, stuff that kind of like raises the cost, like the 3 steps up, right? That not only raises the cost of the home, but also kind of like defeats the life cycle of this person, so that they may not be able to use this home as they get older. So it's just starting to think through some of those kinds of like architectural things, or built-in code things that kind of drive up the cost, the minimum lot size, the minimum footprint for a single family, and keeps those starter homes in kind of like an affordable place, so people can move out of rental and kind of like open up that market on the high quality, low cost housing, rental housing. One of the other things I've been trying to like get through, that's kind of been mostly through the ABA, but it's called anti-fragile plausible mortgages. So the default clause is that debt accelerates. You'd owe everything once you miss a payment, but there's some like breaks in that, like to catch up through the legal process. But what we've seen in the pandemic, so it's possible, is that, if it's a FHA-backed mortgage, we're just going to pause the payment. So conceivably, we could do the same thing where we pause these payments, so that it's meant to kind of like, amortize the debt, and push it off, and just kind of elongate it from 30 to 35 years. And so that we keep people in homes rather than like destroying their equity. And then again, putting more people into this kind of like system. But that's kind of like, most real estate deals are fragile and meant to break really fast on a missed payment, and we want to do the opposite since it's such a big deal. So that's a project that we would love to see happen, and I think it can happen. I haven't like done the full analysis, but I'm pretty sure the state can require some of these things in their mortgage license or mortgage contracts. Then life cycle thing we talked about. Some of the things that I think are cool that could be out there is like a right of first refusal for tenants. So if rental home is going for sale, tenants have an automatic right of first refusal. That's in DC. They can do it through apartment buildings and a tenants association. So that might be something that, you know, to consider here, as well as any cliff effects. So hard lines that say either I'm eligible or I'm not eligible, rather than a sliding scale that kind of like diminishes benefits over time or over income or whatever the qualification criteria is instead of that. One of the last things kind of here is the enabling services. I'm not sure if you're familiar. This is Medicaid enabling service 5A. That's kind of like directed by a doctor, and then Medicaid pays for it. Now, some of these states have done stuff with, and I'm sorry I didn't link it here. I will link it after this call. But some states have done this and asked for an expansion. So governor asked for the expansion of Medicaid 5A to include legal services. So you've seen this in like the medical legal partnership world to, you know, get a landlord tenant attorney or something like this. But a few other states have talked about this for homelessness, where somebody who went into the ER has some condition, and to make sure that they don't come back, you know, and the comorbidity of poverty, homelessness, and health effects is that now I'm going to pay for you to stay stably housed for the next 90 days while you're finishing the course of this treatment that brought you into the ER, and using some of those 5A enabling services to pay for that housing, catch somebody up for 3 months, whatever, as a way to kind of like another source of money for solving homelessness. But I'll link that in here. I didn't put it in here just yet. But yeah, so that's kind of like what's out there and what we're seeing and hearing in different spaces. Yeah, and
Great. This is great stuff. I mean, some of this is definitely things that we have on our wish list or are working on. Some I haven't heard of, so I really appreciate your coming on. Just wondering if anyone has any other questions. I think people are active on your slides, and I see somebody got their pen out and put something on there. So questions for JS?
There is one in the Q&A.
Oh, Anna, yep.
From a follow-up question, the meetings you mentioned with the Secretary of State, are any of those open to the public? And if so, when are they, and how would you go about getting signed up?
So these are not, these are just like one-offs. So we have they obviously have a policy person, like the legislative director. And so you can reach out to them. My contact is in the legal division of theirs. But this is more of just like us having a conversation and the doors open. We work together on some like of their road to restoration projects and things like that. We don't work directly on that project, but just kind of like, hey, help me out on this, or I'll help them out on this. So it's more of like just like a relationship that was born out of you know, past conversation and work together. But it's not like a formal thing they do, but they do have somebody who does the legislative affairs, and they have their internal policies that they ask for. So like the secretary cares about this issue, so these are the laws that would need to be changed to help that issue come along. And they, in my kind of experience, have been generally receptive to that conversation. Particularly whether it's either getting more. This administration, I think, is more like how can we get as many people licensed as possible? And the prior administration, I think we had some conversation mostly about like that kind of like administration, kind of ease of administration. Can we like compact some of these things into like lesser, lesser exceptions or different differentiations between the rules? And that's also good for us in terms of like explaining what's going to happen to a person when they go into the court, right? Nobody explains, for example, the driver responsibility fees for 15 years when like defense counsel never explained it, or additional suspension periods that nobody explains right now. And so simplifying some of that code was kind of the previous administration. But now it's more about like, how do we get people licensed or relicensed? That's been kind of the focus of the conversation. But the door is open, I feel like. Yeah, I would start with the legislative liaison.
Thank you. Any other questions or last comments? Well, I just applaud all your work. I mean, I want to kind of stay in touch and keep track of what you're doing. And I know our stuff dovetails specifically on the system failures and criminalization of homelessness, trying to make things work better. Oh, Angana has a question. Anna's applauding you and Angana has a question.
Yeah, sorry, I was slow on raising my hand. Hi, Jayesh. Thanks for
Hey, what's up?
It's a great presentation. I guess just on one point on the starter homes, which I think is a major problem because then people become slaves to rents. I didn't could you was there a point about building smaller homes or
so there
only small homes are 80 years old, like mine.
Yeah. So 900 square feet, right? So a lot of the things like we think about within the starter home, right? Then like there's sometimes lot size minimums with respect to the lot, right? And so sometimes some cities will build that into the code. So like I'm only going to sell lots in half acre. And then with that half acre, you must cover this much with some usable space. All right. So it's like pro-growth kind of mindset. Like it comes in the anti-environmental places. Setbacks as well. But those types of things all kind of like get like baked into the code. And so it ends up like stopping it ends up like leading to these cost escalators. So if I have to use this type of siding or this type of material, then all of a sudden I need to justify the cost because no one's going to buy a 900 square foot with these type of exterior materials. So now I got to go to this big or whatever. I think it was the average size now is like 1,500, I want to say, from 900 to 1,500. So those kinds of things I think definitely are there, but I think a lot of it is driven by like kind of like considerations based on the code. And then I think there's like,
No, I know the codes exist, but what do we do about developers just wanting to? I mean, can we motivate developers to also want to make small houses if we change the code? Because building one house for a larger margin of profit, calculation.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that I feel like is, I don't know if I put it in here, but like thinking about CLT or not CLT, but like nonprofit owned housing, but if we can get loans based on like housing choice voucher occupancy. So even if I discounted the margin difference that would be paid by the person renting in there, but can that housing choice voucher support the loan on building this home or this series of homes in this infill kind of context? And then we put, if that's the case, then okay, great. But getting CLTs or getting CDFIs or other kind of like banking institutions to start being okay with that, I think would be a solid way to kind of build that infill housing. And then if you wanted to couple it with like a deed restriction so that they could sell it and it would always be permanent affordable housing, then I think that would be kind of where you can do the CLT Houston stuff. But that kind of combination, but I think the CDFI plus like a housing choice voucher kind of only backed. We're trying to think about it with HUD-VASH because then you got a mortgage buyer on the back end that would be, help people qualify. So we're kind of gaming it out. It might be Minnesota. Hopefully it'll be Minnesota to try first, but that's kind of like putting all the pieces in together for that. But that's one of the kind of ideas being floated is to get the HUD-VASH to support the loan or get the loan based on just the HUD VASH value, and then transition out into permanent.
Thank you. That's a very well thought out plan.
Yeah.
Very, very helpful. Thank you.
Very interesting. Thank you so much. We'll send this document or link it somehow with our slides. And I really appreciate your coming on. And like I said, we will continue to follow your great work, and hopefully this won't be the last conversation with you.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thanks for all the great work you guys do.
Thanks. Thanks for being our guest today. All right. Ashley, if we can pivot to our slides, and we'll talk a little bit about what's going on here federally. Thank you. So as many of you may know, Congress passed a short-term continuing resolution late on Friday, and the shutdown was averted, at least for now. So Congress continues to keep working on the budget. And the continuing resolution was only for 45 days. Actually, we don't have the slides up. 45 days till November 17th to hammer out some kind of an agreement. Either pass the fiscal year 24 budget, pass another continuing resolution, or face a government shutdown. So as you know, continuing resolutions kind of maintain the previously appropriated funding level from the previous year for federal programs for a specified period of time. This gives lawmakers a chance to really kind of reach an agreement on the 12 appropriations bills that they need for the upcoming fiscal year 24. So as you know, there was an agreement that was made to agree on kind of designated funding levels with caps for fiscal year 24 and 25 on federal spending in exchange for raising the debt ceiling until 2025. So hopefully, Ashley, we still don't see the slides. I don't know if there's a little hiccup there, but thanks for hanging in there, everyone. So this is the bottom line is this is a critical time as Congress kind of goes back to work. There we go. Thank you. To try and pass the 12 appropriations bills. You can go 2 ahead now. There we go. The proposed, the Senate versus the House versions both continue the level of HUD's rental assistance, which we need for continuing, rental assistance, homeless assistance, tribal housing programs, and those were spared from cuts in both the House and the Senate version, which is great. Now is the time to really ramp up your advocacy to really make sure that these levels get appropriated and get continued. Go to the next slide, please. So, it is really critical because, as you know, housing costs and development rises every year. So HUD's affordable housing and homelessness programs need to receive at least some increase appropriations just to maintain the same level of, continuing current people that are housed and communities served. So without additional funding, people who rely on HUD's programs for safe, stable housing will really be in danger. So we really need you to contact your members of Congress today and make your voice heard and let them know that, Congress cannot balance the federal budget on the backs of people with the lowest income and the most vulnerabilities. You can go to the next slide, please. So
Lisa, I'm sorry to interrupt you before you jump into this one. I just want to make sure folks see in the chat. There's a link that if you click on that, you can very easily contact your Congress, do the sign-on letter. So as these slides flow, we'll make sure to pop those links on the chat for you.
Thank you. And we're also sending you the link to the National Low Income Housing Coalition, one of our partners at the national level, their action area where you can, contact your member of Congress. There's language in there for you, as well as a couple sign-on letters to prevent evictions, promote access to affordable housing, and improve housing stability through the Family Stability and Opportunity Voucher Act. So all of those will be at the National Low Income Action Center. So now we'll pivot to some state updates. Our source of income legislation that we have 5 bills pending in the House and the Senate. As many of you know, and some of our coalition members are on here for our Coalition for Expanding Housing Access. We are waiting on a full Senate vote. There have been negotiations back and forth, and we're hoping to see favorable language that will, prevent folks from really having their rentals excluded. That's really what we're working on right now. We have a new sign-in letter link to a Google Doc that hopefully is a better platform. And if you have not signed on, please do. Ashley made us a great graphic with a lot of the logos from organizations that have previously signed on to support the legislation. We are also working on a municipal support letter for municipalities that either have source of income protections or see their value. So all that is going on right now. Next slide, please. A couple other bills that are going on right now. The Representative Carter's bill for, it started out more narrow around the application process and somebody's credit history, but now is being expanded, the language, so it will apply to more of the rental application process for rental housing. So we're excited about that. So that's being rewritten or modified. Fair Chance Access to Housing. We had our partner Lisa Tenser from Fair Institute on last time, and she told us about their work around this Fair Chance Access to Housing bill that would, prevent people from being discriminated against based on their criminal histories. They are doing House action at the Capitol on October 17th that many of us are going to. And then House Bill 4919, Representative Devendorf's bill, which is a homeless bill of rights, had a hearing last week, and they had a lot of homeless advocates come out and give some testimony. So that was really great. Other bills in the works include one on junk rental fees, one on more narrowly on application fees, and eviction expungement and sealing. So those hopefully will be introduced soon. And you can stay updated. There's a link that is on the slide. Hopefully Amy can pop it in there. If you want to track the bills or take a look at what's going on with the status of a bill, you can see it there. Okay, next slide, please. And let me just take a peek. I know Lisa put something in the chat. Lisa Tenser. Oh, okay. Lisa's saying the Capitol Day information. If anybody can join or share with your networks, they're looking to get their registration numbers up this week. So there's the link in the chat. Thanks, Lisa. Happy to share that. All right, now I'm going to pivot over to Ashley.
Hi, everyone. My name's Ashley, and I'm our policy intern here at MICA, and I'm going to walk you through some of our Homes, Our Votes election work and what you can be doing to help promote voting in general, especially voting among unhoused populations. So National Voter Registration Day was this September, and this fall and in the winter, it's more important than ever to start ramping up your efforts to get people registered to vote. Something to note is that the primaries this year in Michigan are in February, making it one of the earliest primaries in the country. So efforts right now are crucial going into the presidential cycle. And it's also really important to be promoting votes among low-income voters and voters who are unhoused. And the statistics below, we just wanted to highlight that voters with over $100,000 a year voted. 83% of that population voted, while voters with incomes below 20K, only around 49% voted. And then voters with disabilities, only about 62% vote. And then unhoused populations remain the lowest with only 11% voting. So things that you can do to help boost these numbers So for housing providers, during your lease signing or when tenants turn 18, you can be promoting voting. During Homeless Awareness Month, which we will keep you updated on, which is this November, there's a variety of activities you could do and be sending out communications in your newsletters and on your website. And so I'm going to be linking my email in the chat here. Micah has created a variety of educational materials centered around getting unhoused people educated about voting. And these are things that you can use in your social media or distribute to your clients. And something really important to note that isn't really talked about enough is that if people are registering to vote on paper, they don't need to have a driver's license as long as somebody knows the last 4 digits of their social security number. And they don't have to have that document on them. They just have to know that. You can register to vote on paper. And so that's a great way that we've been educating people to vote. And that's something that's really helped us to boost voting among unhoused populations. And then just to add something at Micah, we've been doing in mid-September for National Voter Registration Day, we were able to host 2 events to register people to vote in shelters, one in Ann Arbor and one in Lansing, and we employed student volunteers to help people check their status and register to vote both online and in paper. So that's one idea that you could have during Homeless Awareness Month at your organization or at another organization. And if you want any more details on how we put that event together, feel free to reach out to me. Again, my email is in the chat. I was responsible for doing a lot of planning, so I'm happy to share any of the outreach materials that I developed. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Ashley. Super important to really make sure that folks that you work with, your coworkers as well, not only the people that you support, people in housing, but everybody is registered to vote so that they can take advantage and make their voices heard come this November and in a year from now when we have the presidential and the other important elections. Thanks, Ashley. It was really great to have student volunteers to volunteer in the shelters. It was a great kind of pairing of people that are very passionate, and students, they had a great rapport with folks in the shelter, so it was really cool. All right, thanks, Ashley. Next slide. Just a couple things coming up from our great partners at National Low Income Housing Coalition, and thanks, Courtney, see you in the chat. They are continuing a great webinar series on homelessness and housing first with some of the other national partners, National Alliance and Center for Budget and Policy Priorities. The next one is coming up a week from today on October 9th. And then there's also one in November. They have all of the previous ones recorded, so if you missed it, you can catch up in it, and I highly recommend it. They have great speakers and really important information on this really timely topic of housing first and dealing with rising unsheltered homelessness, rising criminalization of homelessness, and rising rental rates. So it's really critical. Oh, okay. Thanks. The Housing First series is paused now, but the regular house calls will continue. So there's a link to the housed campaign calls, which the next one I believe is next. So that might be the one on October 9th next week. Thank you. Yes, and you can still get the recordings if you want to catch up with those. Next slide, please. Thank you, everyone. Just wanted to, note here, these are our 2023 policy priorities, but I did want to say that we will be taking a look now that, fall is here and the end of the year is not too far away. We want to take a look with an eye towards 2024. Are they still relevant? Are they still meaningful? Are they, really important? And most importantly, is anything missing? Are there things that you're seeing in your communities or your work that we should be thinking about? So we're going to be reaching out to you to kind of get your thoughts and poll you on policy priorities for 2024 and do a refresh here. So I just wanted to note that. So stay tuned. In the coming months, you'll see something from us on that.
And Lisa, may I add on this slide? This is Amy again. I'm the communications manager. If you want to drop it in the chat or email myself or Lisa, I'm just curious for you all who have a full inbox, you have lots of meetings. Is there a certain way that works best for you to get this feedback back to us that maybe we haven't tried in the past or that we have tried and you really enjoyed it? Lisa's super detailed on getting some draft language out to everyone, but please let us know, are you more of a Google form person? Do you want a webinar to chat about it? What format would work best for you in the time that you have to get that feedback for you? We're really open to that. Thanks.
Thank you, Amy. Next slide, please. So now we open the floor up. Is there anything going on? Do you have any updates? Anything you'd like us to know about that's happening in your community? What are you thinking about? What are you dealing with? Anything that comes to mind?
Hi everyone, this is Anna Scott. I'm from Grand Rapids, and I mean most of you guys know me, but many of you don't. Lisa's aware. It's something I'm in shock that even has happened. I was in a domestic violence situation with a Grand Rapids Housing Commission mainstream housing choice voucher. I could not find housing despite our source of income protections over housing choice vouchers and being denied them. And of course, as we know, that's why we need state level oversight so that there can be actual actions taken. And my abusive landlord, who actually was the one subletting to the man who, I mean, they were both abusive to me, had made a complaint to the housing commission that I was subleasing and all these things that, I mean, everyone who's been walking this with me knows isn't true. I'm completely homeless. I'm going to lose my appeal because my Jeep broke down. I can't get anywhere. I can't get to my medication, and I live in chronic pain. And I mean, just by the looks of the paperwork, they just took whatever she said. I'm a registered nurse. I'm one of the most ethical, honest, and trusted professionals in our country. And that's the thing, is it shouldn't be anyone's word against another. It should be based on an investigation. And so what scares me is the fact that I know so much and I have these individuals like Lisa and, Anna from Community Rebuilders helping, like, who doesn't have these people, and how many people is this happening to? And that's what's really scary too. So I just want to bring it to everyone's attention because I mean, this was 2 months afterwards and we're trying to find me a house. So I just think if it can happen to someone who is educated, who has individuals fighting for them, think of everyone else who doesn't. So it's got to be more widespread. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Anna. It's just heartbreaking. And I know, like Anna said, if it can happen to her, she's an advocate. She attends all these calls and, is very well versed in a lot of the system and is just navigating multiple systems is just a steep climb. And so, Anna, my heart goes out to you. And yes, thank you for sharing your story. And if anybody has any connections in Grand Rapids and is looking for affordable housing in the area, so let us know. And we're in touch with some advocates who are helping her hopefully work through some of this. But there's multiple things. All right. right, thank you, Jayesh. Some ideas, Anna, and I will save the chat and send it to you too. Anyone else have any ideas for Anna or any comments, anything going on in your community? I don't think I see anyone. So, oh, one other thing, I would just say that the Summit on Ending Homelessness is coming up this month, and registration, I believe, is still open. It is the 23rd and 24th of October up north in Bel Air. Next slide, please. And Anna, you and I will talk offline because I haven't heard your update. Yes. Go ahead, Amy.
Absolutely, thank you.
I'll take the training slide on behalf of Allison Green, our training manager. We do have a training, as Anna's story is so relevant. October is National Domestic Violence Month. It's obviously more than a theme when you hear her story and the pain in her voice. But we do have a training on Monday, October 16th, and I'll drop the link in the chat. And if you're on our mailing list, you'll get the information for that. If you want staff to attend in honor of this month, or the training is recorded, you can show it later, but there is registration information in the chat. And then we are also working hard on finishing up the end of the year training. The one in November is on case notes. And then I'll be doing a year-end one on messaging and communications as you do some communication planning for 2024. So those are some of the things we're looking at for November and December. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Next slide, Anna. I don't know if you're looking at the chat, but you're getting some support and affirmation as well. We have another MICA update. As you may know, oh, you have the Monday in there, but actually it's the month of November.
Sorry, that's my fault. That was my fault. I apologize. Right. I copied the slide and didn't delete what I should have. I'll take this one as well. On November, not Monday, October 16th. The whole month of November is Homeless Awareness Month. As decided by our members, the theme is that everyone has a role in ending homelessness. And just to ask yourself the question, how can each one of us play a role in ending homelessness? Are there any agencies on here that are underway in planning an event for Homeless Awareness Month, or are interested in doing so, that you could quickly share what you have in mind? Nope. Okay, that's all right. We have a lot of information. I know budget is an issue, that we would like to do something, but we may not have the funds, things like that. So if you can go to our website, there's a lot of information there that will kind of guide you through that. You can register your event with us if you'd like, and I will drop that in the chat, but I'll also make sure that it's sent out in our newsletter. It can be something as large scale or as small scale as you have the bandwidth to do, and you know what works best in your community, so you may already have some things in mind. But MICA is here to help in terms of if there's any support I can give you with fundraising, with graphics, press releases. We have a lot of that in our blog as well, so I will share that in the chat. And that's all I have, Lisa. Thanks.
Thank you, Amy. And I have to say, the toolkit is so great. There's a lot of things you can just plug and play if you're like taking a pause after the HUD, COC application, and you can't just take on one more thing. It's a great way of even just, putting things out on social media or sponsoring something that's, not a huge amount of effort. All right, next slide, please. Just want to thank you for participating today. There are a number of ways you can follow us on our social media platforms. Also, Amy's been doing a lot of updating of our website, so you can take a look at us there as well. And I just want to end by saying thank you for everything that you do and all the hard work and the collective energy towards ending homelessness is just amazing. So thank you, everyone. And we will look forward to seeing you again next time. Have a great month.
Thank you.